All right, Dr. Hoffman, you're live.
Thanks, Jeff. And we did advertise this as a joint meeting, correct?
We did indeed, sir.
So we'll call the Franklin Township Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors joint meeting of June 2nd, 2022. Call it to order at 7:05. First order of business is any public comment. Second order of business would be minutes from, I guess, April, or was it the 2 May meetings? I don't have the agenda up in front of me.
I went over the minutes. Sarah had prepared them, and I thought they represented, what was discussed in the meeting. Any comments on it?
Okay.
Dr. Hoffman, it would be the April 7th and the May 5th meeting, sir.
Right. Okay. So then we still have one other May meeting outstanding.
Correct, sir. She's got that in the queue to get finished.
All right. Should we take them separately, or are the 4 of us agreeable to have a motion for both the April and May meeting minutes?
It's whatever you're comfortable with.
They really were summary comments because we were in the process of doing things. So I don't think there was anything of any significance in there other than say we're moving forward. So I move to approve them.
The John moves to approve both meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
Sure. Second.
Thanks, Zach. I think we're still waiting for either Mark or Matt, but I.
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. I'll second too.
Great. Any discussion?
To work this right, I'll mute it. I'll second it also.
Any discussion?
Dave, I have a couple comments.
Sure, Paul.
So on the April 7th minutes, I think there were 2 outstanding issues that were discussed when they originally came up that I don't believe have been resolved. The simpler one refers to the headers for section 4, which I believe brought a query from you and Chuck as to what exactly that was, if I recall correctly. And I certainly don't know what that is. The second one refers to the paragraph above that, and which I felt was futural in the part in terms of describing what the next meeting would do. I also personally feel that this is somewhat more of it's a description of what occurred that was not made specific during the discussion as such. And within that, more so, I think that fundamentally, I'm not sure that if the phrasing open space budget has any real meaning in this context. The open space budget, like the budget for employee salaries and the budget for working on roads, is decided every year independently by the Board of Supervisors, and so is an extremely flexible and non-specific amount of money. It could, in theory, be something very small one year and something very large the next year.
Do you have any suggested wording changes, or how would you propose? Just remember, we have a motion.
I understand that.
And if we want to withdraw it, and that's fine, but.
So I would need a better understanding of what is being talked about in terms of physical advocacy here. But I think that in my experience in sitting in boards of supervisors meetings over the past several years, I've seen supervisors take different positions that I wouldn't necessarily expect, and I've seen them a number of times, particularly with respect to the former Vinoy property, and more recently with setting up a budget by setting aside $20,000 a year. That each time those votes were taken, they essentially in the one kept spending at a certain level that could have been diminished if the idea was in fact to diminish it and bring it in line with ultimately tax revenues. And in the case of the second, which is the more recent budget fund that was set up, then went beyond that and expanded open space money. So I'm not sure that when you look at this, that the lines that this sentence is setting up is in fact as specific as it would seem to be in terms of township practice. And so
Do you want to make an amendment to the motion?
I frankly think that in many ways that this whole paragraph is problematic and should be struck.
Can you?
I would point out, you're asking me to. I find this problematic. So you're asking me to reword something that I think doesn't either accurately describe the way the township is operated in many respects, and I think it has terminology that's fundamentally meaningless. It's not like a family sets up a budget and adheres to it over multiple years. The open space budget, such as it is a very flexible thing that depends upon the interests of the elected supervisors. So to say that you want to keep open space funding within the open space budget means that you want open space funding to be whatever it is for the year the supervisors have taken the vote on the budget, which to me is meaningless.
So Paul, maybe perhaps what was being referred to as the tax dollars, because there is never going to be, the way our tax structure is set up, there's always money coming into the open space. It will never be zero, right? There's always that 0.5 mils that goes into open space.
I appreciate both discussion, but I think either we need to ask for rescinding the motion because we need to be discussing the motion. If we want to be rewording the agendas or revisiting the minutes, then we either make an amendment to this motion, which is to approve the two agendas as written.
Right. So I'm a non-voting member. I think that the voting members have to decide what they want to do. I'm just pointing out something I raised the last time that this came before the Planning Commission. There have been descriptive changes to the public comment at the beginning and the end, but these two items, one of which was questioned by members of the Planning Commission other than myself, and the item that I questioned at the time, remain unchanged. The voting members are entitled to do what the voting members want. And as I said, from my point of view, this is I don't know. I mean, if Chuck and I believe it was you, Dave, said that you weren't sure what this headers for section 4 are up for review meant, then if you figured it out now, that's fine.
Right.
What I'm saying is that I find this whole other paragraph problematic. If I were in a position to make a motion to the voting member, I would move that it be struck. But I'm not a voting member.
So I think what we're stuck on here, and so Paul, this is not to agree or disagree with what you're saying, but what we're doing here now is a process which is approving the minutes. So do we want to change the way the minutes are reflected? And then when during the comp plan discussion, bringing this up again for discussion? Because right now we're voting on whether or not the meeting minutes are accurate and need to be changed. And so if you feel the meeting minutes wording needs to be changed to reflect the ambiguity of the decision, that would be what we're voting on. And then later when we discuss the when the planning commission actually discusses the comp plan, that would be when we can discuss whether or not you want the planning commission wants to strike that paragraph. Does that?
No, I'm talking about the minutes as written.
Okay.
And I would point out that I think that there are, in my own personal view, problematic items with the May 5th minutes. I think that the section on William Hutchings' property is, I just don't think the tax info belongs in there. This is whether it provides additional tax info or not, it's not pertinent to whether he is attempting to accomplish something appropriate with his property. And finally, under the comp plan, the end of it, more complicated language changes for the subject of the meeting, I think is at the next meeting, but it doesn't, it's incomplete as written.
Right. I definitely appreciate those comments. Chuck, we have a motion right now to approve both meeting minutes that were on the agenda.
Yes.
And there's been Paul has stated some obvious concerns with whether the minutes reflect the meeting.
Mhm.
So we do have a motion to approve the minutes, and there's concerns about the contents of the minutes and whether they reflect the meetings appropriately. Do you have any thoughts?
I would agree with Paul that the sentence that says which would create tax revenue, that probably should not be in there.
And then did you join, Paul, the reference to chapter 4 was back in the April minutes?
Yeah, it was, I believe, Chuck, you commented that you did not understand at that time what headers for section of chapter 4 up to review meant.
Yes.
And it's still in the minutes.
Yes.
So I would ask us, John, are you willing to take amendments, or even with those amendments, do we want to table these minutes once again and get them
I'm
worded?
ambivalent. If we feel it's not a true representation, then we'll table it and put it back out.
Do you want to withdraw your motion right now?
Sure, I'll withdraw it.
Mark, are you in agreement to remove your
Yes.
second? All right,
That's fine.
great. So we no longer have a motion on the table. How would we like to address these minutes, which at least there's enough discussion and concern about the wording and whether they adequately reflect our meetings? We asked to go back to the drawing board on these, and we didn't quite get what we thought we wanted. So how do we make sure we get it right the next time?
Well, I would ask Mr. Gontars to continue to work with Sarah Patton on the minutes.
Yeah, we'll get Chuck Phillips involved to see what specifically is the issue, okay?
I heard two things, the headers. So the question was, headers for section 4 are up for review. We asked what that meant. Does anybody know where that came from? John, do you remember that?
No, but unfortunately, no, I don't. It's got to be in the YouTube video. I just haven't gone through that point.
Got it. And as far as the May 5th, Bill definitely said that. However, Bill said a lot of other things, so I don't know that it's accurate to just pull out one thing that he said. So if we take out which would create tax revenue through earned income tax and real estate, I'm fine with the minutes. I don't know how about everybody else is. Paul, what do you think?
Well, rather than do it now, why don't we just wait and discuss it and then bring it up at the next meeting and approve the minutes at that point? Because we have other things to do tonight. So we're just
When you're
tabling.
looking at Bill Hutchins, the section on Bill Hutchins, I would suggest so you look at, there are two sentences in a row that start, he would like, they can easily be collapsed down. They're sort of saying the same, well, one of them is saying something that is sort of obvious. You usually don't come before the planning commission not liking to get something approved. But you know, it would just be, I think it's descriptive just to reduce it down to the multi-use building, the flex use building on the property.
So how about if Paul, John, and Sarah work together?
Nice punt, Chuck.
You got it. I just don't know that I have anything to contribute. I agreed that I don't know what that sentence says, but I'm not going to know what it says in 2 weeks either.
We just have to go through the YouTube video is what we'll have to do.
Got it.
Well, if you're willing to go through the video, that's great, John, and I appreciate that. I also don't know if collectively those of us planning commissioners and alternates can't remember what it references. I doubt it's of any much importance that it even needs to be in the minutes, but let's table these one more time, and John, if you can spearhead getting it reviewed along, and if we pass it out, when we got these minutes out, Jeff, last week, right?
Yeah, I think it was last week.
Yeah. So if we all can make a good effort to make any comments before the meeting, before the July meeting, if we're not happy with the minutes, that would be great.
So you got to remember, though, a lot of this was a work in progress, and really the results of our collective thinking are in the comprehensive plan as we're going to review it tonight. So, you know what I mean?
Right, and I'm not against having simple minutes for the comprehensive plan, because to try to surmise the whole evening is way too much. It's just that the simple minutes are, several of us have said we're not sure what they mean. So we should at least agree that we understand the minutes.
Okay, I'll get a hold of Paul, and two of us will work together with Sarah to sort that out.
All right, let's move on then to the comprehensive plan. I think it would be good, Janine, with the information that was updated with the maps, if you don't mind summarizing for everybody what's been updated since our second May meeting.
Can you hear us, Janine?
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. I was busy trying to get the plan up on the screen. Thank you for sharing, Jeff. So basically what I did is, as we talked about at the last meeting, is I incorporated all of the comments that we had made from starting in the early March PC meeting and marked those in the comprehensive plan in the place that they would be made in the comprehensive plan, and then highlighted those changes in yellow so you guys could all see them pretty quickly. There were changes in, I think, just about every single chapter or appendice except maybe appendice D. And then there was only one map change that we'll go through quickly. So thank you for scrolling, Jeff. So chapter 1, if you remember, is an overview, and it goes through what is a comprehensive plan, regional settings. It does talk about the township planning context. None of these words have been changed. As you can see, there's no yellow highlights. Then we scroll down to keeping going. What is the need for the comprehensive plan update? Then it does talk about a little bit more about that. And then talks about the municipality's planning code and how the comprehensive plan addresses the various sections of the municipality's planning code and references those sections. And goes through the various aspects of the municipality's planning code. And then talks about the planning process and the outreach. This talks about the regular comp plan meetings. This talks about the survey, the community workshop. It talks about all the different outreach that you guys did to get to the point of this draft plan. Notice that the Planning Commission meeting information and the Board of Supervisor meeting information is in yellow highlight. I did update. This is an example of where information has been updated. I updated this information to reflect the meetings that the Planning Commission had done. And then also the June Board of Supervisors meeting that'll happen. And then that's the only bit that was updated in this chapter. And then, of course, how to use this comprehensive plan. So then moving on to vision, goals, etc. This talks about the goals for each chapter. And this is basically what we were calling kind of the tear out plan, because the goals are in this chapter, as are all of the recommendations and actions. And we have that recommendation and action matrix and an explanation of it. And then we added 2 items to parties responsible, Chester County, and then to be determined, which we added during the process of the implementation matrix. And moving down through the implementation matrix, you'll see exactly where changes were made. So in the ag industry section, we have a TBD, as you're seeing in 3-14, 3-15. Those were changes that you had requested during these meetings. If we keep scrolling down through ag, there weren't that many changes in that chapter. Then we scroll down to chapter 4, and that is the resource protection chapter. And then chapter 5, there was a change for 5-12, a change for 5-14, 5-15, 5-21, 5-23. There were some changes to this chapter. And then the road and community infrastructure chapter, there were some changes under the community facilities and rural landscape, as you're seeing. So those changes have now been made. And then another change. And then scrolling down to green infrastructure, there were a bunch of changes there. So those have been made, including some to the actions themselves. Vehicular circulation, a couple changes. So now you're seeing all those changes made. On-road bicycling, a change. The village enhancements, there were a couple changes, as you're seeing. And you're noting most of these changes are to the parties responsible and to the partner parties. There aren't that many changes in the action items themselves or in the summary of the action items in any of these categories. So keep moving through this chapter. crossed out one action item in this chapter. And then we move down to the last chapter, which is the future land use chapter. And there weren't that many changes to this chapter. I think at the very end, there was a cross out of an action item. And then moving on to the next chapter, which is chapter 3, the ag chapter. Now you're going to see the summary of the changes now reflected, in the ag chapter. As was requested in all the chapters, the number of respondents was put next to the percentage for the survey results. So you'll see that in every chapter. Moving down to ag context, we didn't have changes. We didn't have changes to existing conditions. I guess there was one about, we were asked to put in wording about the commitment to ag land preservation, and progress has been made. So we added that wording. Then moving right into recommendations and actions. There was a request to add training or sporting. Then there were some changes under coordinating with the agricultural industry. And notice the word charrette has just been changed to forum. The new committee idea, connectivity to enable equine activities, having displays to showcase ag products. This next section just changes charrette to forum. Then moving into supporting ag land preservation is the next page or so. The recommendations. There was a cross out for the land trust idea, and there was a cross out for the cell tower earnings idea. So both of those have been crossed out now. Moving into the ag forum, the farming forum, and then further down into the next set of recommendations, the ag soil protection. There weren't changes in this section that I remember.
If you could stop at 3.3.3, this is an editorial. You keep on going, a little bit more. Okay. It's right before the, so if you look at the first bullet, at the very end of the first bullet, this is just a period needs to be added there. Janine, do you see also any major changes in farm operations would trigger updates to plans? Just needs to have a period there.
Okay. Will you just highlight that, Jeff?
Maybe. Let's. Is that okay, Janine?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So then moving down, changing organic to sustainable under that action item. And then the development pattern related to ag. I don't know that we have many more changes in this chapter. And then no more changes. So moving on to the next chapter, chapter 4, which is the resource protection as green infrastructure chapter. Again, respondent numbers were added for the survey results. And then moving into the context, the background information, and existing conditions. We go through our various resources. Added some wording about the open space that was provided by Donna and that we talked about in at least one meeting. Then moving down, a little bit of a wording change for that sentence for historic resources. Then moving down further, we get into the recommendations and the action items. Not too many changes in this part of the chapter for the recommendations and the action items, some changes for open space preservation. Just some typo changes right here. Getting rid of the land trust recommendation again. Getting rid of the cell tower. Adding a reference to the Board of Supervisors. A typo. So not too many changes to this chapter so far. And then moving into chapter 5.
So the goal in chapter 5 was changed, but it wasn't changed in chapter 1.
Okay, thank you. Do you mind noting that, Jeff?
Mm,
You can add a text note. Excuse me, in a PDF document.
You want me to go back, Janine, and highlight it?
Let's at the very end. Let's just keep going.
Okay, you got it.
I don't want to make everybody dizzy, which is what it'll do. Okay, so again, respondents numbers for the survey. And then moving into the recommendations, the motorized vehicle, the marginal motorized vehicle, wording, develop to consider for official maps. A little bit of wording change there. Displays again for showcasing ag. The cross references the ag chapter. A little bit of wording there, changing for the pro board instead of paths committee. And then moving into chapter 6, which is roads and other community infrastructure. Again, number of respondents for survey results. More number of respondents. Moving through context.
If I could stop you here. Yeah. So right now, what was changed, and I know you did it because we asked you to. It says Lexington Point serves as an example of a recently constructed community sewage system in the township. And what would be more accurate is that Lexington Point serves as an example of a community sewage system that is being constructed, because it's not constructed yet. So it's in the process of being constructed. So I mean, I can send you the words, but I would just change it to serves as an example of a community sewage system that's being constructed. So it'd be that is constructed in the township.
If we want to have any wording like that, Donna, we might want to say at the time of this writing, because this document is going to exist for 10 years before it's revised.
That's fine with me. I just don't want to be confusing that, because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it hasn't happened. It's not recent. It could be not recent, right? When we get to it. So.
Thank you, Jeff.
I'm trying.
Yeah, it's being constructed, so that's good. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Jeff's learning on the fly.
He's good.
I think we'd all be in agreement with that. The planning commission, speak up if not.
And I just have the word is being, but I know Janine will get the hang of it.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. We added the stuff about the closure of the hospitals. Moving into recommendations. So these are recommendations for roads and for community infrastructure. A little wording change there. The salt wording change up there. Then we have the traffic calming changes in this this action. And then, oops, sorry, forgot to highlight one in yellow.
Interesting.
That's okay, Jeff.
Okay.
I can highlight it. The over salting again. Then this is the soft shoulder language. And this is the one lane language that Chuck had been talking about. And we move into on-road bicycling.
Did you mean to take out that word currently, Janine?
Yeah, that should have been crossed out because it recently completed. That wasn't a change you made. That was a change I made because it wasn't factual anymore.
Okay.
So. And then moving into chapter 7 is Kimblesville chapter. And again, survey results have numeric values next to them.
Except for here, I didn't understand what was going on in this particular section with the White Craig Creek Preserve and State Park. Did you?
I don't know. I'll double check that. We must have had problems figuring out what the numbers were. So I'll go back and double check that. I apologize. I'll go back and figure out what those numbers were. Moving into context and then existing conditions. Then the actions for Kimblesville as a community center. Added the funding, changed the charrette to forum. Moving through the historic resource recommendations. And then the walkability and traffic calming. Got rid of the 896 trucking route recommendation. And then lastly, moving into land use for Kimblesville. And then the last chapter is the future land use chapter. Again, adding the survey results, numerated. And then moving through the context. The existing land use numbers were updated based on that map being finished, and that's the only map change that was made since you guys saw the maps last time around. So some of the land uses are crossed out because they aren't land uses in the township. And then the numbers are updated. And then moving into recommendations and actions for future land use. Most of these have not changed since you saw them last time around. The multifamily triplex option idea was put in there, was added. And then the tiny home action was deleted. And then we move into the appendices. And the first appendix is the community input. You had asked for the survey response rate to be added based on the number of, we listed the number of respondents and then the population. And then there's no other changes made to this appendix, Jeff, so you can scroll through this quickly. The next section is brief health history. We got rid of Lenny, and it's just Lenape. That's the only change to the section. Then demographic tables. We put a hyphen between COVID and 19, which was the change requested for this section. And then the last appendix is the acronyms, and there weren't any changes to that appendix. So the only other change that was made is if Jeff wants to bring up the mapping under existing land use map, we added the one Paradox Winery property was shown as single family residential, and so we added that as ag.
Janine, before we go on to that part, do you want me to go back and highlight section 1 and save this?
Yeah, if you want to just scroll back really, like take the scroll bar and scroll back really quickly. Perfect, thank you. And that was chapter 5's goal, I think.
Thought it was chapter 1, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's chapter 1. It's in chapter 1, but it was chapter 5's goal. It's in chapter 2, I'm sorry. It's chapter 5's goal, though, that was changed. In chapter 5, but not in chapter 2. It's up at the top of this chapter.
Okay.
Right there, stop. Oh, so just highlight the chapter 5 goal, and that just has to be changed.
Did you see it says Chester 5? Yeah, so you gotta get the whole thing. Yeah. Janine, did you see that?
No.
You see the Chester 5?
Where does it say that?
Oh, look at
Doesn't say chapter, it says Chester.
It says Chester. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, Chester
I did not
County.
put this 20. Can't get enough of Chester County.
The existing land use map, Janine?
Yes.
Hopefully you can see that.
So yeah, if you scroll down, we just changed the one property that was single family residential, or scroll up a little bit more. There's a property there that was single family residential and we changed it to ag, and that's the only difference
Right, where, yep.
in all the maps. So compared to what you saw last time. So other than the comments you made, which thank you very much for making those comments, those were effectively all the changes that were talked about in the meetings since, you know, the Planning Commission review started in early March. And I can go ahead and, you know, make those additional changes and get that back to Jeff.
Janine, I was scrolling through the maps again this afternoon, and I noticed that on the regional settings map, which I think is the first one, if you scroll down, stop there. Too far. Thank you. You see the big green area in the center of Franklin Township below 896? That's the Ford Farm, former Ford Farm, now Wilkinson property. It has a perimeter trail, but the property itself is not a recreational area, which is, I believe, what green is indicating here.
Okay.
The property itself is, you know, farmland that's been preserved through having its development rights sold.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. This comes from a generic database, so I don't know how that ended up on there, but.
But isn't one missing? The other township park should be on there. Beastdale?
Isn't that the green blob further up? Which one? Peacedale?
I think Peacedale should be right in the mid, just underneath the two road signs.
Yeah, Peacedale should be in the center, south center, almost abutting Strawbridge. So it looks like over to the east where the cursor is, that's the Ford Farm, and that shouldn't be there. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, between 896 and the preserve.
Yeah.
That's the Ford Farm. That's not. Yeah, that's what caught my eye. But
okay. Yeah, this is a general database. I think this is like a GIS database that we get. It's not a database we maintain, so I don't know why I picked that up.
Are you not able to change it?
I don't know if I can change it. I have to ask the mapping guys. We use a product called Esri, and they have databases that come with Esri. And so they must have picked that up for some reason. I don't know why, but I can ask them. I'm not really sure the answer to that, but.
Are we comfortable by just asking for it to be changed if it can? Otherwise, we'll accept the map, guys.
You know, it may be possible for them to simply cut and paste yellow over this green, even if you can't get in Peacedale Preserve, and let it go at that without, if the product that we're working with now no longer depends on an outside database.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be desirable not to have that green because it's extremely misleading. And if I were the property owner, I'd be unhappy.
Okay.
I think it's important enough. It needs to be right.
I don't know if you're able to mark that up, Jeff, are you? Probably not.
I am not. I don't have that ability for here. I'm sorry.
Okay. Could you write a text note on it?
Maybe.
See where the pen is above? Over. Oh, or you could do that.
Top of the page. To your right.
Yeah, to your right, a little bit further where there's a pen. A little bit further right there. Nope. Oh, well,
That's sign,
that's signed. One more.
close that. All the way to the right. All the way to the right, close.
So to the left of the sign and to the right of where you were, kind of smacking a little bit further over to the left. A little further over to the left.
You'll just close that.
Okay, I'll just remember it. I'll just remember it so we can move on.
Okay, so beyond this map, what else do you need? Do you have any other comments, Paul, on the maps?
No, I didn't. I happened to notice that. Obviously, I looked at this before and didn't notice it then.
Okay. Any other changes to discuss that anybody knows of?
I did not see any. I was happy.
I don't see any.
I didn't see any.
All right, so a lot of work over, I don't know, I forget how many meetings. Are we satisfied with the document to recommend moving it forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Dave, you want me to make the motion?
Please, John.
Right. I make a motion to recommend that the Franklin Township Planning Commission forward the comprehensive plan to the Franklin Township Board of Supervisors for their review and subsequent adoption, based upon the reviews and revisions made by the Franklin Township Planning Commission on March 2nd, and subsequent reviews and revisions made by the Franklin Township Planning Commission and Franklin Township Board of Supervisors at their joint publicly advertised meetings held on April 7th, 2022, April 5, 2022, May 5, 2022, May 17th, 2022, and June 2nd, 2022. With this Planning Commission recommendation, Franklin Township will provide copies of the Franklin Township Comprehensive Plan for MPC review to Chester County Planning Commission, adjacent municipalities, including Cecil County, Maryland, and the Avon Grove School District, which will initiate the 45-day public comment period. Are there any discussions?
I have a second.
I would second.
Great. Any discussion on the motion?
All in favor, say aye then.
Aye.
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 I do have a comment, but I didn't want to make it till after you voted because I'm not part of the PC. So I do acknowledge that these were joint meetings with the board, but there was a conversation about the official map that I had brought up that I didn't support, and that's fine. I mean, the PC talked about and they agreed to certain wording that's in this plan. I just want, as an FYI to everyone, that when this comes through the board, that will be an issue that I will bring up with the board with the intent of having that removed. But I just want to be transparent to the PC.
Donna, just FYI, London Britain actually also has one. So that was not mentioned previously, and I was actually looking at their documentation recently, and they have one. Just so you know.
Yeah, I just the whole concept of it is Yeah, it's just something I can't support, but that's not what this is about. Like, I just want to be clear that me participating in these meetings has been very, very helpful. 99% of my comments have been addressed. It's just that, just because the PCs agreed to it doesn't necessarily mean the board, we get one more shot at it. That would be my one issue.
Okay, well, hopefully we present to you a plan that you don't need to do much changing to. So we'll move on to public comment.
Yes, John Auerbach. I've got two comments. One related to the discussion at the beginning of the meeting on the minutes. I just remind the PC and the board, it's the minutes record what was actually said or discussed. The fact that you may not agree with some of that doesn't allow you to change the minutes. The minutes are what was said and discussed. So I would keep those facts in mind when you go back and revise these minutes. Second comments related to the overall plan and the survey. And the plan is based on the survey very strongly. The survey really defines it. So I think you need to define the survey and its characteristics at the beginning of the report. So when somebody reads it, begins to read the report, they see what the results of the survey. So the characteristic of the survey needs to be clearly defined at the beginning of the comprehensive plan and the overview policies chapter 1, so that the reader can appropriately assess the information presented in the report. Burying the incomplete information about the survey in the appendices is inappropriate and could be considered deliberately deceptive. So I propose a paragraph that you put in the introduction and policies in chapter 1, but it was not adopted. So I assume I'll have to take that up with the board at the next meeting, or possibly in a public comment after the board approves it. But I think it's really inappropriate to not fully define the characteristic of the survey, which the entire comprehensive plan is based on. That's my comment.
Great. Thank you, John. Before we adjourn, I just want to, there's only 5 of us that get a vote, but I very much appreciate everybody's interest and input during the whole process. Janine, thank you from all of us. And any other comments?
Yeah, I just quickly grabbed a screenshot of the map, circled it in red, and shipped it off to Janine and Jeff. So
Thank you.
You should have something in there now.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Legacy.
And Paul, I'll get together with you and we'll go over those minutes, okay? I'll try to do it
Sure,
later this weekend, okay?
that's fine.
And work on, we'll do all 3, or I guess 4 minutes, but maybe not next week for the 4th one.
Okay.
Great. Anything else before we adjourn? We'll adjourn at 8:08.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good work.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.